Before we proceed, I'd like to do an acknowledgement country that we are on the lands of the Kaurna people, country that has never been ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. And when we give respect to the traditional owners of the land, that being Kaurna, that we have regard for not only their children here in Kaurna country, but all our Aboriginal children and young people across South Australia, in which we hope for a better future. Thank you.
Sandy, we'll just have you affirm your evidence, if that's all right, before we start. Are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
So, I'll ask you to repeat after me, and maybe Ms. Rose could pass you this just in case you get lost. So if you wouldn't mind repeating after me. I solemnly affirm that the evidence I will give
I solemnly affirm that the evidence I will give
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. And if you could please state your full name, address, and occupation. Thank you.
Sandra Miller.
Sorry, Sandra, can I just say, don't need to disclose your home address. And you're retired, haven't you? So you don't have
Retired.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Ms. Miller. I understand that you have quite a significant history working with the department.
Yes, I have.
Can you tell us a bit about it?
Maybe 40 years, thereabouts.
In what role did you work?
Started out as a community worker, and then the department took the step of.
What year was that?
I can't remember. Before you came in, a long time. You were still at uni, I recall. And the department took the step of converting all Aboriginal community workers to social workers, basically. So I moved into that area and worked in district centres for a while. But most of my work has been in administration, so in the area of Aboriginal units within the department, both in health and in welfare.
Right. So in that role, in those roles, particularly in administration, what was your involvement with Aboriginal community organisations and the community?
Well, the community generally, yes, we as workers in the department in those early days, we did do a lot of work with the community, going out and actually doing home visits, both in, well, there was a role that I played under the Aboriginal Health Council, for example, which was a visiting role to Aboriginal households. Back in those days, we had what was called the Aboriginal Housing Program, and we had, in fact, the entire list of all of the houses that was placed under that umbrella for Aboriginal families. So we knew where to go, we knew where the families were. And it was sort of a health and welfare type role, because in our conversations with people when we visited, we weren't just looking at how their health was holding up, but also the conditions that they were living under, how many children were in the home, were they going to school. There was a whole host. It was quite a little sort of like welfare role without calling it that. So back then, I mean, I think it was really essential. It's still needed today, actually. I don't know why they got rid of that, but you know, it's not for me to question, I suppose. And it was really pivotal in understanding what was going on within families. And you could, as a result of that, call in other service providers who should be involved. Education department, if the children don't appear to be going to school, if there was major health issues, we could get people to doctors or get a home visiting doctor. That we had 2 doctors at that stage at the Aboriginal Health Council. I don't know that they do that sort of role anymore at the Aboriginal Health Council. I think it's much more administration and, yeah, things have changed.
Yeah. So how did the community accept you? Was there a sense of distrust about you being
No,
workers
not at
within
all.
the department?
No, not well. No, and that's the thing I think that's really essential here. Is that families were far more likely to open the door to an Aboriginal worker than they were to a non-Aboriginal worker. And one of the roles in those earlier days that we played in welfare was we would accompany the white social worker, because that we were the door openers. And once we, and most of us know each other. That's the other thing. I mean, I can't say that's the case for me these days, because I don't know the next generation down at all. I don't know whose children is who anymore. But that's because I'm not out there anymore doing that sort of work.
But you did in those days?
Oh yes, very much so. That was a really important role to play in being a door opener, if you like, making people feel that they could trust what we were doing. Those home visiting, look, at one stage I went and did a placement with the Aboriginal Childcare Agency, which has now become APS. I took a secondment to ACCA.
Yeah.
And I was responsible, along with a woman called Trish Fitzgerald, in, again, door knocking every Aboriginal household that we could in order to recruit foster parents, because we needed a pool of foster parents if we were going to push the child placement principle around, you know, Aboriginal children being placed with Aboriginal families. And we ran those recruitments and training programs out of, at that time, Nunkawarrayunti, which was just called the Aboriginal Community Centre.
Wakefield Street.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, and that was a really successful program as well. And that's the other thing that's happened now. ACCA in its original form is no longer there. It's become an arm, and this is my interpretation, of the department, where their role is to basically support whatever the department's directions are that they want to take with a particular child. They will attend family case conferences, which are ordered by the courts. I was personally involved in 2 of those that I was advocating for. And I found the ACCA's role quite disappointing in the role that they played in both of those.
In what way?
Well, for me, they weren't looking at what was in the best interest of the child around the child placement principle. They weren't questioning. I mean, I'm probably a bit domineering, and that's why they weren't going to question me too much, because I'll say what I need to say, and I'm pretty firm about it. And I might have been a bit intimidating, but my experience was that they didn't do their role in protecting my interests. In fact, I found the judge better. The children's court judge was much better in making people sit down and talk about what was going on. I can't remember her name now. Oh, don't know. I told you yesterday I'm not good at names anymore. That's all right.
I understand when you went from being a community welfare worker into the role of a social worker, what did the department do to support you in the transition? Were there any further studies that you did?
Some people had to do further studies. I didn't at the time. I think my qualifications got me through. Plus,
what were your qualifications?
My community development. So 3 years of community development at the Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
So they could convert that to the social worker role. But yeah, some people did have to go back.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it did not go down well with the non-Aboriginal social workers. They were quite angry about the fact that Aboriginal people were taking this next step up on their level playing field without having what they saw as the correct qualifications and whatever they had to go through to be there.
Yeah.
Usual story.
Yeah.
I don't take any notice of any of that.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit to us, please, about some of the programs that you were instrumental in setting up while you were
yeah, while I was working in the, and I don't want to take credit for doing all of this stuff on my own. I would often come up with the ideas, but there was always a team of people. I never did anything by myself. And one of the programs, well, there's several programs actually. There was the community, I can't even remember what they call community youth programs, young offender programs. We started out calling them young offender programs and decided that was a negative. And so we turned it into just a youth community program. And they were so successful. And I was a social worker at that time at the Sejuna office.
Are the youth project centres you're referring to?
Youth project centres? No, they ran out of Far West Coast. They were community youth programs, I think they were called. But we had set them up in every major Aboriginal community. That is, every community that had a large Aboriginal population. That was federal funding that did that. But it was the department who had to make available the youth workers at the time out of the district centres to run those programs. Now, that program in particular was really successful, and we ran a review after 12 months with the late Dr. Andrew Dugood, and that report have to be somewhere on someone's shelf, where it showed that the success of the program was such that, just taking Sejuna itself as an example, there were no offending in that community for a whole 3-month period. Not one offender. We had to also change the criteria for young people coming into the program, because what they were doing was deliberately walking up the street and breaking a shop window so they could come to the program.
Yeah.
So we opened it up to all of the children. Those that we thought were the naughty ones had to go into this room and do a bit of counselling and work through what their anger issues were. And the others, who were just mischievous, got to go on camps and do, all sorts of activities that should be available for all kids.
Right.
I don't think we had any. There might have been 1 or 2 non-Aboriginal children who hung out with the black friends that came to the program, but basically it was mostly Benungus kids. Then, of course, the Fed stopped funding and the state didn't pick it up. Usual story. And that program came to an end. And, of course, now we've got half the youth detention centres, more than half, in fact, filled with our kids again. That was one program. The other thing that we set up through the Aboriginal Coordinating Unit was a thing called the Children's Aid Panels. And that was for young offenders, all young offenders, but it came out of the idea from the Aboriginal Coordinating Unit at that time for Aboriginal kids, but we stretched it across to everyone. And that was made up of a social worker, the district centre where the kid lived, their manager or their senior person in that unit, plus a police officer from that area who knew about the offending. And that also had a huge success rate, because children got to then talk to the 3 panel members about why they were doing, why they were offending, what was going on in their homes, and that then could be followed up by whoever needed to follow it up, whether it was a youth worker or social worker or medical, you found out all sorts of things from the kids when they felt okay about talking. I've got no idea what happened to that program, but again, fell over. Were you around then, April?
Yeah, I was around in the early days when they were
Children Aid
running.
Councils, yeah. The other thing the Aboriginal Coordinating Unit set up under the leadership of Sue Varden, who was so supportive around the Aboriginal topics. Do you know Sue Varden? Yeah. Was the Aboriginal Child Placement Principle. We wrote those, and that proved to be really successful in keeping children out of, the non-Aboriginal placements. Plus, at the same time, we've done this whole recruitment around foster parents, Aboriginal foster parents. And there was also, I think some of the success of that program was the fact that in every community I went around and set up the family care conferencing. Now, the family care conferencing was made up of volunteers, usually older people in the community, a couple of younger men or women would be part of it. There was no expectation of payments, although I don't think that if it ever comes back, that should be the case. I think people should be financially compensated for, their knowledge and skills and experience that they bring to the table. But that proved to be a real success, because for every child who needed a placement, you would have the community members around the table talking about what's going on. There's no confidentiality in our community. Everyone knows everything. So that was all put on the table. People would talk about what was in the best interest of this child, and they would come to an agreement with the social worker, whose case it might have been, about what action they were going to take. The other thing we had at the same time, though, were these group homes. Every major centre around the state had what was called a group home. In the case of Port Augusta, they had 3, because the community was a much bigger community. Ceduna had 1, most other places had 1. And you didn't then have to split a family of 3, 4 or 5 kids up. They would just all go together to this group home. But no,
Who were the workers?
They were community members. They were usually, a married couple who might have had 1 or 2 children of their own as well. And they would take these other foster kids in as part of their family structure. They were quite big group homes, say 5, 6 bedrooms, to cater for that. And it kept the kids not just in their community, but having access to their family, not having to change schools. And it was a, in my view, it was a perfect structure for keeping families together.
Do you know what happened to that?
Got funding. And again, the group parents did not get paid. They were
trained.
They were trained. There was a lot of trained. Yeah, they were trained in how to manage children and children with difficulties. But the children were in their own community, so they had access anyway to whoever their medical person was, whoever the social worker might be, and so on. It was a huge success. It was so successful, in fact, that I was being asked by interstate agencies to come and talk to them about that program, because people started to hear about it and saw that it was working really well.
Do you see it in the same vein as residential care, group homes?
Which bit? The residential care? Yeah. No, I don't. You've got the residential care is not a family setting. It's just different social workers coming in and out. you know, lots of kids who don't necessarily get on with each other. There's no assessment about what each child would need as far as those sort of settings you're talking about. It's just about getting the child into a bed somewhere. Yeah, I've never seen them as a success.
I understand at one time when you were heading up the Aboriginal coordinating unit in Department for Community Welfare, I think Department of Families and Communities, that you coordinated or had oversight of the Aboriginal family care model program. Sorry,
family care. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The family care committees. That came out of that family care model. Yeah, I wasn't heading it up at that time. I can't remember who was. Might have been Sandra Saunders, John Brown, David Rathman. They all came through, but I tended to be much more on the ground, doing the sort of community contacts and so on. I headed up the unit when it became the Department of Human Services. Remember? You were working there then.
So the family care committees, can you tell us a bit about what they were, how they were put together?
I certainly went out to the community, talked to whoever the Aboriginal workers were in a district centre, who then gave me the names of people they thought would be interested and who would have the right sort of makeup to sit on a panel. I would do a door knock and speak to people about that. And, you know, back then everyone was really enthusiastic to be involved and be part of making decisions about, you know, their young people. Because we're talking about their own, you know, children in their community. And we always had a full complement of people, you know, participating in those sort of panels when we needed them. Cup of tea and a biscuit and a sandwich was all they wanted, and to be picked up. So social work, that was the social worker's job, to go and pick people up. They needed over to the centre. And most of the meetings happened in the Aboriginal community centres in most towns, where people felt comfortable, not in the district centre themselves. Look, I think the other thing I think that we could be doing is the department could be engaging a lot more with what's called the list. You know, Charlotte Kelly's courtroom. Well, I helped set that up with a lawyer from ALRM. What's her name? Lynn Valentine.
Yeah.
And because what do you call it, Judge Kelly, I had come back from New South Wales and had seen the model over there, and wanted to talk to a few people here about whether it would work here.
Yeah.
So again, I got involved with Lynn, and we set up, you know, consultations with various people using ALRM's boardroom at the time, because I was a board member at the time, so sort of took liberties. And yeah, we made it happen. The thing about the list, though, is that it's a federal model, and feds and the states don't work together. I mean, if we can get past that, we should have, I don't know if it's a principle or whether it should be legislated, that the department cannot remove a child without first bringing it to Judge Kelly's court. Because in her courtroom, she can order people to participate, you know, with Ngunnawara Yunti, if it's a health issue, any other service providers that are around Anglicare, whoever it is, and that once it's court orders, as you know, people have got to do it.
Yeah.
And the families, they've had a huge success. I've just recently been talking to Kirsty
Yes,
Mellon. I can't remember her name.
Melons.
Malin, yeah, who's the Aboriginal worker that I helped recruit into that position. Do you know that Courtaulds working there too?
Dwayne, yes, I do.
Oh, I didn't know that. Out of the blue when you retire. But there has been a real success there because of that sort of court ordered practice that people have to undertake without removing the child in the first instance. But I don't know if the feds and the states will ever work together. I mean, if we could get the department to at least agree, like they did about the child placement principles, not that they're sticking closely to it from my observation, but we could then get them to go to Judge Kelly's court rather than straight to the children's court. The problem is, once the department hits the children's court, then Judge Kelly can't be involved.
No.
It gets stopped.
Yeah.
But we need to bring back the family care committees. You know, there's a new dynamic as well that we're dealing with, and that's the amount of drugs in our community. Not just our community, all communities.
Yeah.
And unless we start putting in place, programs to address people's drug use, that they are just not there. He wants to get off it, but it takes so long for him to get an appointment with somebody that he falls over again. And then we have to start again, pick it up again. There are just not enough spaces for people, for young people anyway, to get that sort of assistance around their drug use. And a lot of, you talk to our kids and they don't want to be using drugs, but they're so addicted, they just can't walk away from it. That's something else. I think that's a problem that's always going to affect, future of our young people is drugs. I think drugs probably more invasive than alcohol these days. I would think.
In terms of, you say that you feel that the family care committees need to be brought back. Is there still the momentum and the will within the communities to revamp those?
I haven't been out there and talked to anyone, so I don't know about that. The people who were on it, 20 years ago, probably are all deceased, mostly. There's lots of deaths in our community, and losing your elders, is really devastating in terms of the community being stepping up and taking responsibility, because it's your elders who keep the community accountable. But we've lost so many of our elders. I don't know. You go to Sandra more often than I do. I hardly ever go home now. The people that I would mix with aren't there anymore. They've all passed away.
In your mind, what was the value of the Aboriginal family care program with the committees? The model, I believe, had an Aboriginal family care worker at the community level. What, from your understanding, what was the value of that program?
Well,
and why is it no longer around?
Well, it's no longer around because the department, deemed it unnecessary, I guess. I don't know. Stop funding those positions. I mean, the value of those positions was that they could walk around and speak to people in the community and you know, be present the whole time. I don't know. I thought if the family care workers became the community workers. Do you remember when you supervised all those community workers that were spread around the state?
No, I believe that was Pauline Davidson.
No, you supervised all the community workers. They were all employed by the Aboriginal Coordinating Unit under Brian Dixon. You were the manager.
Oh, the community development health officers.
Yes, I don't know if they took over from that role in terms of, you know, door knocking and being present and in the community, because that was a successful program as well.
Yeah.
Very good program. These things just stop operating. I don't know why. They do it to us all the time, you know, constantly changing the goalposts. I mean, a really early example was that Aboriginal schools. What was it called? It was somewhere in New South Wales. Highly successful back, I think, 60 years ago. They decided not to fund it anymore. What for? And then no one, you know, can't fit into the mainstream. There's a bit of problems with that too, I think. We've got a school here called Warrapindi, which takes Aboriginal students. Non-Aboriginal students can go there as well, you know, if their associations are with other Aboriginal kids. So there's usually a couple of non-Aboriginal kids there. But I don't think that the teachers, I guess they're all teachers, come with the right set mind of, you know, what their role is in supporting kids through that system when they've fallen out of mainstream. Yeah, I've had a couple of run-ins with them about, you know, was this just a head count so they can get their funding, when really a lot of kids were still falling out from Warrapindi as well. I don't know. They're going to move to Mile End, to that new, to the old,
Orangeville.
yeah. What is it, TAFE Centre there or something?
Biomedical Centre.
Is that? It's great. I think that's a much better location than where it is on the corner of South Road and Richmond. South Road and Richmond Road, yeah. Right on the corner. Busy intersection. No real yard space for the kids. Going to Torrensville, I think, is a great idea. One of the positives for the new freeway going through, because they have to move.
Forced relocation.
Yeah.
Sandy, can you speak to us about the importance of Aboriginal leadership within the department, within these programs that are for them to be effective within the Aboriginal community?
Look, it's really important. Again, not just because it's an Aboriginal person. You have to have the right people. I've seen programs fall over under Aboriginal leadership because you didn't have the right makeup at the time. However, generally speaking, if you've got a healthy team of Aboriginal workers, you get a lot of work done. You get to know what's going on in the community, because people come from a community perspective. What I'm seeing these days is a lot of Aboriginal people who you don't see outside of the work area anymore. They're all become public servants. I shouldn't say that, should I? This is all getting recorded. Yeah, I'd be going flat out trying to find who out there in the public sector that is, you know, really committed to working on behalf of the community.
So what does Aboriginal leadership bring to an organisation when you're looking for the right Aboriginal person in that leadership role?
You've got to, well, you know, yes, you have to be professional. I mean, you used to accuse me of taking no prisoners when I headed up the unit. So, you know, your workers have to be accountable and you have to make them accountable. You need to be able to, you know, refocus your community, remind them regularly about what their jobs are. A good leader is someone who will lead by example as well, not just, you know, just talk about the issues. Don't want to go into personalities or talk about people in particular, but I'm associated at the moment with a number of health areas, and I'm just so frustrated with the way that they operate because there's no leading by example. So if you've got a leader who's a slack ass, why would your workers bother? No. And I kept, you know, I would keep my distance from the workers. That I had a bit of a them and me sort of personality. So I didn't go out drinking after work with the workers. I didn't socialise at that level. If there was some particular social event that was being organised, then I would attend those. But I think people were probably pretty happy to see me leave early. So, yeah, I think leadership is something that you have to demonstrate yourself and keep your staff together and on, you know, same track. Have your regular staff meetings so that everyone knows what's going on in the place. I don't believe in secrets either. I always have an open door policy. People can come and talk to you anytime. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking, you know, having an appreciation for what you described as leading your team, and you had the support of Sue Varden, as you described, about the
And then there was
support.
Christine Childs.
Yeah,
You know,
well-
we had a couple of very good leaders, women in particular,
Yeah.
that came along in the department. Jim Birch was okay, but he allowed the division to run down in terms of removing funding when they were doing an audit of Treasury, I guess, was trying to save money. So you cut the black programs. Sue Barton and Christine Childs would never do that, ever. And yeah, what was your question?
Well, it sort of feeds into what you're talking about in terms of you've been in the role as leading an Aboriginal unit. You have the support of
60 people that's gone down to 3 or 4 now.
Yeah, significant downsizing over time.
Yeah.
But that leadership is more than just leading your team. It's what you do across the system. What have been some of the challenges in terms of Aboriginal children and young people and creating change that you saw for yourself, what you had to do to affect that?
Yeah, it wasn't about what I saw across the system, but more about what I felt was needed in the Aboriginal community.
Yeah.
And so it was then just a case of getting people on side, working out in the department who the people were that you could convince. When we did a lot of that, we had, particularly you and I, we had a lot of meetings with people that we know was important in the decision making. And we would meet with those people and talk about what the issues were and get people to see sense in what we were saying before it was then taken to the executive table, because you knew then that you had a couple of people around that table who were going to back you when you came up with a a suggestion about how something should work differently. It sort of happened sort of naturally. I don't think we really planned it. We just knew that if you're going to get change, you had to bring some other change agents with you, I guess. Otherwise, you're standing out there on your own.
And a whole lot of data.
Well, you know, that was the other problem we had in the beginning. There was no data. We had to insist that that information got gathered so that we could prove our case. I think it's gone back to that too, isn't it? Like everybody's just in the one bucket now, and they can't really tell you. Except what's that family something program that's happening at the moment, where all states and territories have to put in data about whether they're closing the gap or not.
That's the National Campaign for Family Matters.
Family Matters, yeah. That's happening there, but I don't know what's happening here in South Australia particularly. Probably know more about that than I would.
Would it surprise you to hear that the numbers of children, Aboriginal children in state care is increasing dramatically in this state?
Not at all. No, I'm aware of that. In fact, one of the other things that we were very instrumental, there was a very small group of senior people, 5 or 6 of us, that would meet regularly at ALRM called...
Can I help you?
Yes.
The Aboriginal Community Leadership Reference Group.
That's them. We really were pushing for that review that was done by Margaret Nyland, is it? Nyland?
Royal Commission.
Yeah, there was a Royal Commission. We were really pushing for this role. We wanted an Aboriginal Commissioner. We also wanted a peak body. We wanted the family care committees to be reinstated. There were a number of things that we pushed for. We didn't get very far with any of it under that review. I think there was a paragraph about that big, talking about the Aboriginal issues. I was absolutely appalled when I saw that review. But we didn't give up, and we kept fighting for the Commissioner's role, and finally got that through. But then people started dying. How dare they? We haven't got them at the table anymore. And we don't have another generation that's come up behind us.
Why is that, do you think?
Why do I think that there's not another generation? This might be, I don't know if I want this minuted, but this might be something that drugs are being brought in with that sort of middle range of that generation in that middle range, or whether it's, look, I don't know why that is the case. We've got another generation of younger people, like April's age group and down, who are now stepping up.
So you're talking about
I'm talking about the middle age, that
between
middle
you
range,
and the commissioners.
all those no voters that we know were partying to that referendum. That's an interesting exercise too, a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Walking around, people won't look me in the eye. Just won't. Young people all smiling and happy and say hello, but not that middle range group. That's why I say they're the no voters. Anyway, another topic.
Thank you. The importance of cultural safety within the community.
Oh,
I speak to
absolutely.
that,
Look,
please?
the other thing that April, myself in particular, but others as well, have been pushing for this peak body to be established. Now that came out of that Aboriginal Leadership Reference Group as well. And it's taken, what, 5 years? Just to get the department to agree we were a little bit angry about the fact that they brought Snake in to do it rather than a South Australian group. But I'm now thinking it's probably in our favour that Snake did it, because it's taken away any sort of favouritism or, you know, any negative comments that might come from our community about it. And Snake recently advised us that the state had funded it. I don't know to what extent. I don't know the financial figure, but they've now advertised for people to apply to be part of the peak body. I think they called it the development group. So, in other words, a group of people who've got the right set of experience and knowledge to set up a peak body. I've applied for that. I am retired, but I've applied for that. I haven't heard anything back yet. The boys got in the way. So things sort of came to a screaming halt for a while. But I think that will go ahead.
And what do you see the role of that? What do you see the role of the peak body?
Well, I'd like to get together with whoever the people are that Snake end up choosing to bring this together, because I've got some ideas that are my own, but not everyone would maybe agree with it. I mean, we need our own district centre, for example, fully staffed by Aboriginal staff. I would welcome any non-Aboriginal person in there, provided they take advice and work to the Aboriginal principles that we might be setting down. There are lots of non-Aboriginal people who are very supportive, who are, you know, really good social workers that I would be happy to work alongside of. This once we've set up the peak body, I think having a district centre with an advisory body of Aboriginal elders and others who take part in decision making around every case that comes through the door. I don't want to make it a strictly all cases must come to this Aboriginal peak body. It's certainly voluntary if you don't want to, you know, be part of the Aboriginal program. And, you know, you've got people out there, lots of Aboriginal people voted no. So you'll have Aboriginal families who don't want to be, you know, managed by an Aboriginal structure, think they can manage by themselves. You've got to then ask, well, why are you in the system at all if you think you can do it yourself? But, you know, you don't force people to come. Yeah, look, until I can talk with others about what that might look like, I can't specifically say what it would be. But I think having a district centre with our own staff, and not every Aboriginal person is going to be suitable either. There needs to be a strict recruitment process that takes place. Yeah, you just.
With the point about cultural safety then, what role would the peak body have? There's a whole list of Aboriginal staff also in the system as child protection would be.
No, I don't know, Echo. I don't know how to answer that one.
I suppose what I'm asking for is that we've got spiralling rates of Aboriginal children going into care, got an Aboriginal workforce within the very department that is charged with the responsibility of making applications to the court for removals. So the decision making sits within the Child Protection Agency. We have a peak body being developed, at this minute for South Australia to bring our Aboriginal community voices into the child protection system. Cultural safety is important for our children and our young people. That's why I've got the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Child Placement Principle. But what does that then mean for our workforce that's working in this environment as well?
If you're talking about those that are still in the department,
Well, this is today, yes.
Yeah. Well, they've got a choice. They can take part in a interview to come and work in this structure. And then they'll just have to sell their views and ideas about how they're going to protect our children. Now, my understanding is that the role that a lot of the Aboriginal, what are they called? Family practitioners? No, what are they called? What's the ANET grade type?
PACS, Principal Aboriginal Consultants.
Their role changed from the original concept that when we put them in place, and their role then was to support families, to advocate on behalf of the children, to argue strongly with the social workers in district centres about following the child placement principles, about following up with there were suitable relatives who can take the child on, and if not, another Aboriginal family in that community. And that role completely changed. They became part of the department in removing children. There's no other work that I can see that they were doing outside to protect the children, which is why it's important that we try and get some sort of legislation that the department cannot immediately go to the children's court, but must send families first to go to Carriers Court. Then you've got some hope of stopping that removal. Because we've got the other problem too now. There's not many Aboriginal foster parents around. So there's the need now for a whole new set of recruitment. So that we've got trained foster parents who, and I know there's a lot of people out there who could do it.
So just on that point alone then, there is the remark that the system can't find enough Aboriginal people.
Well, they haven't tried. There's not been the effort to do what we did back in the early days, and that is to door knock, to find out where people are, specifically go and speak to people about what's needed. I mean, people say yes or no. But
do you think your relationship with the Aboriginal community provided that advantage of being able to engage and to find?
Provided what?
Provided you the advantage of going out to communities, doing door knocking, engaging with Aboriginal families as part of their recruitment into foster care?
You think my relationship with the community helped that?
Yeah,
it did. Yeah.
So what you're saying before about the people who are not able to make eye contact with you, that generation, are they the generation that are not stepping up to be foster carers? And is there a reason for that you know of?
No, that's why I was saying before, I'm not sure whether they have been affected by children being removed from them. And so they don't have the capacity to even look, after other children. I'm not sure, because I'm not doing the door knocking and out there talking to people anymore. And nor do I want to, really. I mean, I've done my bit, but I'd be happy to support others and some sort of training programs.
For those
people like me who, it's my partner and I live together. We're in a big house. I could easily do fostering, but I won't because I don't trust the department.
I was just about to say, is that reluctance to step up a trust issue?
Absolutely.
You don't trust being engaged.
No, I don't trust that when a child is dropped at my door at midnight, that I'll see a social worker the next week.
Right.
It'll just be left to me to do it all. And I don't have that capacity. The system has to start recruiting people who are going to actually front up the next day to make sure that you've got everything you need. Not expect that I'm going to go out and buy all the nappies and the bottles and the school uniforms, whatever it might be. And someone in my age group, I would expect that to have somebody turn up every morning, take my children to school or to kindy or to wherever they have to go. I would expect to be able to ring whoever my social worker is to say, this child has got a toothache. I need someone to come. And, you know, like the service is just not there. People just get left to manage by themselves. This was one of the big complaints I started hearing when people started to stop fostering. We've got a whole group of grannies in Port Adelaide, the Grannies Group, all of whom were foster parents who complain every fortnight when I'm there about, you know, what's going on with their grandchildren, how no one's helping great-grandchildren. A lot of them are still quite healthy. A lot of them could foster children, you know, emergency. I think when you get to a certain age, you don't do the long term. But we always need emergency foster parents. They could all do it, provided the social worker turned up the next day.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
They would say you can't trust the social workers.
Right.
You won't see them again.
What do you think, in all your experience, works in preventing removals for Aboriginal children and young people?
Well, like I said before, you need to have your community backing with those family care committees. You need to have community houses, family care centre houses. I don't know what you call them these days, but where a child or 3 children can all stay together, siblings can stay together in their community. When it comes to young offenders, we need to have more programs that engages young people in activities. Look, I can only talk about the Sejuna one from first-hand experience because I was a social worker in that office at the time. The kids just loved it. They looked forward to, oh, when are we going on the next camp? You know, they would come in. They had fantastic working relationships with the youth workers. Is that what they were called? Yeah, youth workers in the district centre. And the youth workers just behaved like their older brothers with all of the kids, you know. It was fantastic. They'd be taken camping, just keep them engaged, not wandering around these little country towns bored. I mean, there were other programs that got established in Sejuna that I was never involved in. I think some youth programs where, was there a youth centre set up there?
Yeah, Youth Project Centre.
Yeah, I was never involved in any of that, but long gone. But I don't know what's happened to those, April, do you?
They're all defunded.
Yeah, things just stop happening when they're successful.
So from a long involvement with the department, it sounds that what you've seen is the cycle of funding, defunding, defunding. So something picks up and can be successful but falls away because the money's
a long time.
Right.
I haven't seen any new funding that's come in for community development type programs for many, many years. I think probably since the Aboriginal Coordinating Unit stopped being a unit. It went to a branch and now I call it a twig. It's 3 or 4 people in.
Oh, that's the unit you're talking about,
Yeah.
health?
Yeah,
Because
the whole human services unit where we looked at everything from youth offending to health to children's welfare. We looked at everything. We didn't put things in boxes. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the education department, but our kids are still falling out of the system.
One of the things we've heard in terms of the evidence we've been hearing over the last couple of weeks from a number of people is that the child protection system, as we call it, was never designed to work and has never been effective and cannot be fixed and made effective in the system as it works now. We've seen that with the increasing numbers. No matter how many reviews we have that tell us what's wrong with it, no matter how much funding gets put to it, the sense overwhelming that I think would be fair to say we're getting in this hearing is that it's not fixable. It needs to be rebuilt.
No, I would agree with that. It's not fixable. And unless we have, which is, what the referendum was all about, unless we've got a true voice and we are responsible for the outcomes, it is not fixable.
Yeah.
There's no trust, and it's going to be even worse now with the referendum going down. People are so angry. Like
Aboriginal people.
Yeah, Aboriginal people are just so angry, so disillusioned, so feeling so like don't even want to be here. Want to go live somewhere else, some other country. I don't want to live in any other country. This is the best country in the world to live in. It's the people on it. That's the problem. So I think it's fixable. I don't agree that it's not fixable. But in its present stage, it's not going to get any better until we do these other things and put things back in place that we know work. In fact, it was Marianne Ben-Salik who did the review on the family care model. And that report must be sitting somewhere. I thought I gave you everything, April, but you said you haven't got it.
No, we did. We have it in the literature review.
Okay.
So just on that point about DCP not being fixable, what do you think is needed in terms of
our own centre, our own recruitment of staff, the ones that we know are going to do the work the way we want them to do it.
Are you aware of things happening over in Victoria with?
No, look, I've heard. I was going to say, if in fact I am chosen to be one of the people to develop up this body, either that'll happen. But if I was, I would want to go and have a look at Victoria. And I understand Queensland's also got a model that works quite well. But I haven't looked at the stats and I don't know how they do it. But I'd like to have a look.
So both Queensland and Victoria have in their legislation the capacity for the state authorities to delegate authority out to, you know, community-controlled organisations or NGOs to deliver on some of the functions laid out in the legislation.
See, I've got an issue with that. I like farming it out to other organisations. It really does depend on who those organisations are and how they're operating now. I don't see Anglicare or Relationships Australia or Lutheran Care doing a really fantastic job at the moment. And a lot of those organisations have also got some of the state housing.
So that's some of the contracts.
Yeah, the contract, they actually manage the houses. It's not working. Like what they've done under the funding agreement from the feds, all they had to do was show that they had an Aboriginal person employed there, and they've all done that. And then the rest of it sort of, you know.
So you're saying they're the wrong indicators?
Well, yeah, it is the wrong indicator. You don't just have one Aboriginal person working in the place who then recruits a whole heap of other Aboriginal people who then just do the same work that everybody else in the organisation does. No,
I think the Victorian model is very different.
Yeah.
It is it's called the Aboriginal Childcare Authority.
Yeah.
And it is an Aboriginal run, operated and answerable.
And are the stats showing that they are succeeding?
Significantly.
See?
Yeah.
That's what we need.
It's an organisation of some 1,000 staff. It's huge.
This is VACA, the equivalent to what we had as ACCA in South Australia. So we've grown significantly with taking on those additional legal.
Well, you know, if we can get ACCA back and make it operate the way that ACCA used to, we might, you know, have a better chance of, you know, making
and
cycle
one of the
too.
things that VACA do too, they've implemented their own social work training course through some of the tertiary institutions, so that they're looking at social work from an Indigenous and Aboriginal lens with Aboriginal versions of attachment theory and all that sort of stuff, and they're bringing them through. That was something she said, 40 a year they're bringing through that course.
What a good idea. I've found social work quite difficult, and I failed twice doing legal aspects of social work because I just wasn't taking what the lecturers were telling me to be the truth. Because I was a senior student by then. I'd already been married and 2 kids and so on. So, you know, I was able to speak up and say, well, that's not true. That's not the way the law works at all. This is what happens. And they would fail me. I got the picture eventually and gave them what they wanted, but I've never believed it. So that's excellent.
It's a really extraordinary model.
I'd like to go and have a look at that too. Anyway.
But yeah, so it's different from the model you're talking about of the church groups, the Anglicare and those taking it on. It's a completely different model, as is the one in Queensland. Isn't it too? It's
the same as Victoria?
Not as well established at this stage, I don't think, as Victoria, but it's working towards it, certainly. I mean, Victoria's been around for a very long time. It's not. It started at grassroots and.
Well, actually, ACCA started in South Australia under Brian Butler's leadership.
Right.
He was the one who started all the ACCAs, and then the other states all picked it up as well. And you know, they drew up their constitution and then had a structure around each state and territory being represented on the ACCA board.
Snake board,
the snake board. And that's how it worked, and it was a real success. Victoria kept going, ACCA here, once Brian Butler stepped away from it, just fell over. Just became an arm of the department.
Mm.
It's awful.
Mm.
All of us worked there. We all got experience there, didn't we?
Mm.
It's a really good model.
And having you've referred to it a couple of times as an arm of the department. So what's the no? I'm asking seriously. What's the attitude of Indigenous people, of Aboriginal people, to it in terms of trust? Does it play a role in building trust between the community, the Aboriginal community?
It's meant to be an Aboriginal childcare agency, and the staff is full of non-Aboriginal people. So, you know, just it's not working.
Is that the only issue with it? You said.
Well, no, I think the other issue is that the staff haven't had the appropriate training to work out what their role is in supporting community, and they've all just become social workers. And I suspect a lot of the non-Aboriginal staff that are in there are ex-social workers.
From
the department.
okay, yeah.
That's what I suspect. I haven't spoken to them to find out, but yeah, that it's not. It's just not Aboriginal enough.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I do actually, and it's about your time within the sector and knowing what it looks like today and what you were working through in that era of whether it be the Department of Community Welfare or Families and Communities, Families SA, under the umbrella of Department of Human Services.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about what benefit you found from the difference in the way in which child welfare, child protection was established as part of a broader agency with what is happening today, and whether you believe that has contributed to the way in which the system responds to Aboriginal families and to basically to vulnerable population groups?
Well, is there an Aboriginal dedicated unit within the department now?
On record, I don't believe so, but it's something we probably need to confirm. I don't believe there is.
No, well, that's the first thing. I mean, it's as bad as what health has got in terms of just having this little branch there of 3 people.
I don't even believe it's a branch, but we could validate that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they call it. I call it a tweak. If you don't have an Aboriginal senior sort of policy unit that is on top of everything that's going on in the department and questioning the process and decision making, nothing's going to change. And I think that's what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just on that, looking at you just reminded me. I mean, one of the other things that I think most of the states now have got a commissioner, an Aboriginal commissioner. Yeah. Northern Territory, maybe not.
Well, Western Australia and Northern Territory have Aboriginal women in commissioner roles, but they're not Aboriginal identified commissioner roles. So Queensland has a commissioner holding responsibility for Aboriginal children and young people.
And who's Aboriginal?
Yes.
Are they all Aboriginal?
Queensland is a general commissioner for children and young people, held by an Aboriginal person.
Oh, okay.
Same as Northern Territory. Nicole Harks is an Aboriginal woman holding in the acting role as Northern Territory's Children's Commissioner.
Well, 99% of kids in lockup are Aboriginal.
Yeah. In Victoria, as you know, Andy Giacomo's the first ever Aboriginal Children's Commissioner. that role is still in place in Victoria. That is held obviously by an Aboriginal person, with the principal commissioner being Leanna Buchanan. But
See, I think there should
South
be,
Australia is probably the with Victoria, where it's an Aboriginal identified commissioner role.
I think there should be a national commissioner who brings all the states and territories together. You know, the more senior positions that we can hold across all portfolios, the better the decision making is and results for our families. Just doesn't work otherwise. Again, that to be the right people.
So, with that question in regards to the role that you've had in government in oversighting the Aboriginal units in regards to vulnerable Aboriginal children and their families, we've heard from you about leadership. I'm wondering, in terms of accountability, the importance from your perspective of Aboriginal leadership, holding systems to account for the outcomes required for our Aboriginal children and young people.
Well, I think, I hate to say this, but if you're going to play a leadership role in any state, you need to actually come from that state. You need to actually have relationships with people. If you come from Northern Territory and you put your hand up for a leadership position here in South Australia, you're not going to be received that favourably.
Mm-hmm.
And you won't have the contacts, you won't have the relationships. And, that's your first big battle then.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't have time to go around, making themselves known to the community if you don't actually already have that. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that sometimes things don't work as well as they should. So it just makes it difficult if you don't have those already built-in relationships.
Mhm.
Does that answer that question?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for what's been a very, very enlightening afternoon. Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you for interviewing me.
Thank you.